Hi, this is Robert Ballard from Retro Car Guy 530 LLC. In this video I'm going to be taking a look at the VIOFO A119 Pro camera. Let's bring it a little closer here in case you can't see it. And this is a camera that I purchased to add to my other vehicle. I have an A119S version 2 in my Chevrolet SSR, and I have the GPS mount for that mounts to the windshield, and I purchased a second GPS mount to have in our Highlander hybrid. And I got kind of tired of moving the camera from one place to the other, or I'd forget to move it. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to purchase the A119 Pro. Check it out. There's some slight differences in the specs on the camera. One's supposed to have better night vision versus the other. But my main purpose is to have a second camera. So I'll show you the unboxing and the setup and go through the firmware update on this. And after the intro, we'll get into that. Please review the automotive information, repair, and modification guidelines on this screen. Seek the advice of a repair professional if you're unsure how to perform any repair or modification safely and correctly. All repairs and modifications are performed at your own risk. I purchased the A119 Pro that I have here from Spytech on their Amazon store, and I got a really good price on it during the Christmas holiday shopping season. And I purchased, along with it, the circular polarizing filter, which goes on the front lens of this particular camera. And I purchased a SanDisk high endurance video monitoring card, micro SD card for this particular one. And I actually use that same style card for all of my dash cams because it's supposed to stand up to high heat, and I've had no problems with it. Here during the hot summer months here in California, it's worked just fine. And it's worked quite well with my other camera, the A119S version 2 that I have in my Chevrolet SSR. I added a GPS mount to my Highlander hybrid windshield so I could easily move the camera from my SSR over to the Highlander, and there'd be times I'd go, get into the Highlander and drive off going, oh, I forgot the camera. So I thought I'd take advantage of the sale that I found to purchase this camera. It gives me an opportunity to check it out. It's a later version of that same A119 series. It's got a little bit different specs on it, but pretty much the same camera overall. With that, I added also a hardwire kit to the Highlander. I had a power adapter, port adapter that would run up to the GPS mount, and which was kind of annoying as well. So I added a hardwire kit to the fuse panel on the driver's side of the Highlander and just ran it up to the GPS mount. This particular A119 Pro is actually the second one I've had. The first one that I received worked basically, everything seemed to work. I noticed when I was viewing the video, the GPS information, which I had the GPS information supposed to be written to the video, it wasn't there, except one time out of maybe 10 I actually saw it on the video. And when I used Dashcam Viewer program to look at it, there was no GPS location info. So then I tried it by putting the A119S version 2 camera in both vehicles, and it worked 100% of the time with that one. And then I put the A119 Pro that I had in there, and it just didn't, like I said, it worked once, and then I thought, oh, I've got it. But no, then like the next 5 times after that, it just didn't work. So I contacted Spytech. They were great to work with. They sent me a return shipping label, and I now have the replacement. So I'm going to go through the setup process with this. If it's like the first one, the firmware on it is the original firmware from when the device was manufactured, and there has been a firmware update since then, and we'll go through that. It's fairly straightforward. And with the circular polarizing filter, I'll put that on the front, which helps reduce the glare. And I purchased also at the same time a high endurance video monitoring card from SanDisk, which I use in all of my dash cams. And I use it with my A119S version 2 camera. It works just fine, especially in the high heat of Central Valley here in Sacramento area of Northern California. So let's go ahead and start doing the unboxing, and you can see what's in here. It's a fairly common thing: the camera, a power adapter, some general stuff that comes with the camera, and we'll go ahead through the firmware update, which is straightforward, and then hopefully we have a functioning camera with GPS info as well. Let's check it out. I've obtained the following information from the VIOFO support website frequently asked questions page for this series of camera. The current 2 cameras available are the A119S and A119 Pro. The main difference between them is the sensor being used in them. The Sony Starvis is reported to produce better low light recordings, and the Aptina sensor in the A119 Pro is better at daytime recording. The maximum resolution, though, is limited on the A119S to 1920 by 1080 versus the 2560 by 1440 on the A119 Pro. The aperture lens feature on the 119S at 1.6 is better for low light recording as well. So if you're looking for a better nighttime recording, you might want to choose the A119S. If you're looking for general around functionality or better daytime recording, you may want to choose the A119 Pro. Here's some of the features listed on the box: 1440p HD video, super night video, parking mode, capacitor power design, 5 megapixel image sensor, 130-degree view angle, GPS logger, which is optional, with the windshield mount, and the circular polarizing filter, which is optional, which I have purchased, and I have the GPS windshield mount, so we'll be able to use that with this installation. The only additional information on this side of the box is the mention of the G sensor and motion detection features of the camera, which are useful for parking mode and impact events. The quick release mount, which there are 2 included, actually 3 included here, 2 that mount directly to the windshield and 1 with a suction cup mount. And you see in the picture here on the box the optional GPS mount. Just want to let you know I have pulled the camera out and put a piece of white tape over the serial number of my particular camera. You normally won't see that white strip there. This is the camera mount area, and it's used to engage the various mounts that are provided with the camera, or the optional GPS mount, which uses those electrical connectors to pass in the power and GPS data. On the side we have the mini USB connection as well as an AV out port. And this side we have the micro SD card slot and a recessed reset button that you can use like a toothpick or paper clip to push if you need to reset the camera, which you usually shouldn't have to. But on this side we have the 2-inch LCD screen as well as the user interface buttons that for power, menu, record, incident, and microphone. And on the front side here we have the camera lens. I'll take that blue film off before I install the CPL filter. And here's the insert from Spytech where I bought the camera. And the bottom box here is where all the other goodies such as the mounts and power adapters. So here we have the suction cup mount for the camera if you want to use that one to mount it. We have the power port adapter and USB cable, which is a very long cable. You can power your camera that way if you would like to. Here is the mini USB cable that is used to upgrade the firmware or transfer files from the camera, which we'll be using to upgrade the firmware in this session. And we have some double-sided tape in case you need to move the mount from one windshield to another in case you had your windshield replaced. And here's some clips to route the cable if you wish to route it on your windshield or your interior. And here are some quick connect mounts that are provided. These are not the GPS enabled ones, that's a separate feature, separate product, which I have purchased for this camera. Here is the CPL filter. It applies to the A119S, A119 Pro, and A118C2. And there's a film on both sides. You take that off, and then you slide it over and engage the little tabs there to hold it onto the front of the lens. On the manufacturer's website, it has the fact that micro SD cards up to 128 gigabytes are supported, and that's what I have here. Is I have that SanDisk micro SD card, but I have a 64 gigabyte version. And to do a firmware upgrade, it used to state that a 32 gigabyte was the maximum supported, but in the later documentation on the website it says that up to 128 can be used. So I'm going to take the 64 gigabyte micro SD card, insert it into the camera on the side where the slot is for it, right here. I get it in the correct orientation. There we go. The connectors that way. There we go. And it should click and stay in. And it actually has a little notch there on the image, so you can see where the notch corner should be. All right. Instead of plugging it directly into my computer, I'm going to plug it into a power adapter for the USB connector. The reason being is I want to be able to get into the menu options to go format the micro SD card. If you plug it into the computer, it gets connected to the computer and you don't have access to it. So I'd rather this first step to prepare for the firmware upgrade, I'm just going to plug it into a typical like a phone adapter that will power the camera. So let's wait. There's a default boot delay of I think 5 seconds. So once the power's been applied, it should boot. So there we go. And those are the default settings. It's recording. It's thinking like basically we're going to be taking a trip. So the default date is January 1st, 2018. And I had it powered up just a little while ago, so the time is actually counting off a little bit past midnight. It shows that it has a micro SD card in it. It's recording at 1440p, 30 frames per second. It's 23 seconds into this video. It is recording audio, and the blinking dot means that it is recording. And if I turn the audio off, you'll see that there's a slash through the microphone. And I can pause the recording by pressing the record button, and it will beep like that during that period to let you know it's not recording. And then at that point you can press the menu, which allows you to go into the menu options for the device, and then use these buttons to scroll and then select. So what I'm going to go down and do, actually we should be able to loop back from the bottom, is I'm going to, let's look at the firmware version. This is version 1.0, and it is again A119P, which means A119 Pro, and it was released on March 26, 2018, and it's version 1.0. The current version of the firmware is version 1.32. So I'm going to definitely upgrade this firmware, but that's what we're starting with, is version 1.0. So let's press OK, and let's go up to the menu option where we get to format the micro SDs so that it's in the proper format for this camera. I have done this on the other camera, but just showing you the process you should go through. And it's warning you that all data will be deleted, and I'm okay with that. Then I'm going to press this middle button to select it. And the format's done. It's virtually instantaneous. So with that, I'm going to now remove the power from this device, which should power down from the capacitor holding the charge enough to power it down gracefully. I'm now going to connect the USB connector to the camera, but it's now connected to my computer so that it will act as a remote drive on the computer, because we've already formatted the micro SD card during the untethered session where I just had a power adapter powering the camera. So now I'm going to plug it in here, and we should see it boot up after that 5-second delay. And there's the boot screen, and it should detect that it's connected to a computer, and it's gone into mass storage mode. So with that, that means I have a virtual drive on, or a USB connected drive on my computer, and it's connected as drive F. So let's switch over to the desktop unit here and take a look at that. All right, now here we go, showing the computer here, and we now have a drive F here. It's with it being formatted 59.4 gigabytes of free space. So if we go over there, we can see the DSIM directory, where under there will be the various directories for the recordings from the camera. But where we need to be is at the very top of the camera drive, and we're going to take this firmware file, which I downloaded from the VIOFO website. It's the version 1.32 version of the firmware. So I'm going to copy, and you copy it and paste it to the root of that drive. So let's do a paste. Okay, and that's now done. Now we need to disconnect the drive gracefully so that the buffers are being flushed out to the virtual USB drive through the camera. So I usually go through the system tray, and there's a little icon down on the bottom here, safely remove hardware, and then I eject that. Or we could go through the file explorer, do the right click on the F colon, and then tell it to eject. So now it's ejected. I'm going to remove the power on the camera in just a moment, and we'll begin the firmware upgrade by reconnecting the power. but I'm going to power the unit with the external power adapter instead of being connected to the computer. The camera now has the upgraded firmware version. It started off with version 1.0. We now have 1.32. We're now going to power the camera, but not as a device off of my computer, but just a USB power adapter for my iPhone. And I am plugging that into the camera. And we should see it go through the firmware upgrade process, which will cause it to boot a couple of different times. And we'll speed through this in the videos to make it a little bit less timely, time consuming. I actually see that there was a blinking light here, which means it was reading the SD card. It's kind of faint in this office light, but you can see it's now flashing red, which means it's reading and writing the firmware file to the camera. And then when it's finally done, it will boot, and then that file will be missing from the top of the camera file system. So now it looks, pretty much the same as we had before. So if we go, let's stop the recording, press menu, and let's scroll to the bottom and select firmware version. And we can now see it's A119P, so it's still the Pro version. And it's got a date of August 28th, 2018 with a version of 1.32. So we have successfully upgraded the firmware to that version. Let's go ahead and press OK on that. I'm going to go through the default setting option, which means whatever the settings were, I want to make sure they're compatible with 1.32. So I'm going to select this. And I haven't said anything yet, so that's fine. Get rid of everything. So scroll down to OK, press select. And now it's going to reboot. And here we are again, booted up with that firmware with the default settings in place. And now it's 1440p at 30 frames per second. So let's stop the recording by pressing the record button. Again, the alert to let us know the recording's not taking place at this point. Press menu. And we're going to go through and pick our options. And let's go ahead and press select on resolution. And you can see the various options, which the 2560 1440p at 30 frames per second was the default. And one thing I've seen is if I go in to the menu option and I select 1920 1080p 60 frames per second, and if I go 3 minutes, or that's how long each video file will be, that's fine. But if I go back to resolution, it still is. Okay, it must have been user error on my part last time, but we'll see. So I'll select that again. So let's go the video format. A new option of TS, which I'm unfamiliar with, but I usually record in MP4 anyway, so MP4 is correct for me. I'm going to leave the exposure at the default. The wide dynamic range I'm going to turn on. It's supposed to create better videos. I'm not exactly sure mechanics behind it, but we'll turn that on. For my situation, I'm turning parking mode off, leaving it off. Time-lapse recording also, I'm turning that off, which are features of the camera I'm just not taking advantage of. Motion detection, turning that off as well because I'm not going to be doing parking mode. And GPS, now notice it's defaulted to off. I'm going to select on. Speed unit, I'm going to change to miles per hour. G-sensor, middle sensitivity, which seemed to be fine in the past. Lane departure warning system, I'm going to leave off. Forward collision warning system, I'm going to leave off. The date stamp, let's leave it on. GPS info stamp, I want all of the info. You can have just speed or just the coordinates or all the info. I'm going to leave it all info. So that will record in the lower left corner of the video that information. And I usually leave this on where it will say A119P or A119 Pro at the bottom of the video. By default, I wanted to record audio. The screensaver is, once the camera boots up, and if you don't touch any of the buttons on the screen, it will time out the video display after 1 minute. That's
You have 30 seconds, 1 minute, or 3 minutes. I leave it at 1 minute. And here's the boot delay I was talking about. Once power has been applied to the device, be it directly or through the GPS mount, it will wait that many seconds to make sure the power is on for that amount of time before it starts to boot. Because you could be starting your vehicle and going through the accessory on, and it might turn off the power while then you go to the start position. So this makes sure that the power is on for at least that amount of time before it boots the camera. And let's leave that at 5 seconds. Whether you want the LED on the camera when it's recording, I usually leave that on. And of course the date time, it's not taking it from the GPS. Of course we don't have GPS connected. Let's correct this. Nope, not 2050, 2019. And get the proper time here. And this is the format, and I'm going to leave that there. I'm in here's the time zone setting that I was mentioning. You've got to pick the appropriate offset. I am GMT minus 8 because I'm on standard time in the Pacific time zone. As you can see all the different options you have here. So let's go back to GMT minus 8. And the language I'm going to leave as English. And the beep sound, whether you want that on button presses, startup sounds, you can customize that. I'm going to leave it on for all. And the frequency I usually set to 60 Hertz here for the US. I don't do an image rotation of any sort. We already did the format warning. It does recycles the space on the drive, so I'm going to leave that off. And we already did the default setting. I'm not going to put a car number, but you could have something here if you want it. A custom text stamp, if you want to identify the vehicle. And then of course here we are on firmware version. Again, that's the version that we just upgraded to. So with that, I'm going to press menu again, which should go back to the record mode here. And notice, there we go. Remember I picked 1080p 60 frames per second? What did it start recording at? 1080p 30 frames per second. That's what I was remembering didn't work right. So let's stop that, go back into the menu, let's pick resolution, and see it's gone up here. That's not the correct one. That's not the one I selected. So let's pick that again. Get out of menu mode, see 1080p 60. And it's recording. So now, and notice that we've turned on the GPS. It says no GPS because I haven't connected the GPS mount. So let's go ahead and simulate a power removal when you turn off your car. And the capacitor, see the red in the record button is still there. The capacitor is handling the graceful shutdown. So now let's go ahead and apply power again. We should go through the 5-second boot delay. And then it should boot the camera. And let's check what resolution it's writing the video as. See, now it's 1080p 60. So that 1080p 30, even though I selected it, wasn't what it was recording at. So for some reason there's some sort of glitch there. I've replicated that both on this camera and the other camera. But the next test is to make sure that I can actually get GPS info recorded on the video. Of course right now it's not getting any, but I'm going to take it out to the vehicle in just a moment and put it in there. And so, of course, you have to let the GPS signals be acquired by the GPS mount. It's not going to be immediately there, so I may take a test drive to check it out, but we'll get it mounted on there. I'll insert the CPL filter, which again slides over this lens here and snaps into place. And then this just snaps onto the GPS mount on the windshield, and then we should have a functional camera. So with that, let's go out to the car. I now have the camera out in my Highlander and I'm going to install it. I've installed the CPL filter which slides on from the side, so let's go ahead and take that off. And I've removed the protective film on the outside and the inside. And notice the notch on the top and the bottom. That corresponds to the notch in the CPL filter. So I'm just going to slide it on from the side here. And it snaps on. And we'll connect it to the GPS mount that's already on the windshield here. I moved the center review mirror out of the way to make it a little bit more visible for you, but we'll just basically take this and let's flip this around so that you can see this. I'm going to install it on the mount and it just snaps in like that. I have the hardwire power adapter connected into the GPS mount here, and then this connects into the camera itself. So now if I start or at least turn on the vehicle to supply power, right, I've turned on the vehicle and we should get our 5-second boot delay. And there's the camera, and right now there's the image. And then in the lower right corner here, we got the 0 miles per hour. So it is talking in some sense, at least, that it acknowledges the GPS mount is there. We have to move sometimes to get enough GPS satellite locks to get that converted into a real signal. So I'm going to take it on a little short test drive here and we'll check it out and see if it goes from red, turn to green right there. There we go. See if that's even visible on the camera there. But it looks promising compared to the other one I had. So let's go ahead and gather some video and check it out. I have the sample footage here from the camera showing the GPS information on the lower left corner, and I blurred out the GPS coordinates, but it's actually recording it on the video like it should. This is with a CPL filter during approximately noon hour. As you can see the date stamp on the video there on the lower right. Things look pretty good, and the reflection from the dashboard and hood look pretty minimized due to the CPL filter. Successful firmware upgrade and camera installation. I noticed when I had this A119 Pro installed on my Highlander, if I tapped the base of the camera, it would actually vibrate a little bit, make a little noise. And on my A119S version 2, it used to make some noise if I would tap the keys. So I actually had a strip across the buttons where I could still see them. It would silence that. But it wasn't the buttons, because I can tap these and not make any noise. It was actually the camera where the mount and the camera were coming together. There was just a slight amount of gap there, and it would allow it to move around enough to cause a vibration noise with plastic on plastic. So I've added very thin strips here on both the A119 Pro that we're taking a look at now, and also on my A119S version 2. I never really noticed that before, but since I'm examining it now, I did hear it. So I just wanted to let you know that I had to add that, and it's not something that would come on the camera, something that I added. It's very, very thin felt that I have from a felt kit for noise reduction on cars. And you might notice that on yours, so just tap it on the base a little bit and see if you hear it, and you can put some thin padding in there. Just make sure you don't block the connectivity strips there for the GPS mount into the camera. I hope you found this video helpful in making your decision whether the VIOFO A119 Pro camera is for you. I've been very happy with both the A119S, and so far the A119 Pro, the second one that I have, works just fine. So please subscribe to the channel, it's free to you, and I hope to see you in the next video. If you like this video, smash that like button. If you're stopping by the channel for the first time, please subscribe to the channel. Click that bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. Please follow Retro Car Guy 530 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for taking the time to visit the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.